Women today are making leaps and bounds professionally, and although the gender wage gap still exists, 40% of Canadian women now out-earn their husbands. So as women gain more economic power and equity, they need to be thinking about how they're going to protect their financial interests when they enter a relationship, whether it's marriage or a common law partnership. Joining us now to talk marriage, money, and prenups is Dilys de Cruz, the Vice President and Head of Wealth Management at Meridian Credit Union. Welcome back to What She Said.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so let's dive right in. How can women protect their financial interests in a relationship?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, that stat. It actually surprised me that 40% of women are out earning their husbands. And so the tide is changing. And I think it's really, and this can actually apply to men as well, too. I think everybody needs to understand where they are financially and understand where they want to go. And so now, it's wedding season right now. And I think what an appropriate time to talk about this. Because so often women, and I know when I was getting married way back then, I got so obsessed with, are my centerpieces going to match like the bridesmaids' dresses, right? I got that bride brain thing happening. And we put so much priority on the wedding and everything else. We don't actually sit down and say, financially, how are we going to manage our money together? And so we've talked about this in past shows where couples really should sit down and come up with a financial plan and understand what each other's goals are. But I think it's imperative before you go into getting married or even cohabitating together, living together, that you're having a discussion about where you are financially and where you want to go and how are you going to manage your money. So critical. I have an interesting story, and this friend of mine has a very good career, and she is married to somebody who has a seasonal job. He's in construction, and so right now they're going through a bit of difficulty. Credit cards are up a bit, and so they wanted to financially. She was saying, I need some assistance and advice in terms of how to manage this, and so we started talking about how they were managing money and how much does he contribute and how much does he make. And she didn't know how much he made. And they just got married 3 years ago. And that light bulb went off for me. And I went, people are not having this discussion. They're going into marriage, but they're not sitting down and having the discussion maybe because it feels awkward.
Well, it's not just awkward, but anytime I've ever brought it up to somebody, they have said, but it's so unromantic. I'm not really doing a prenup. I'm really writing my divorce agreement.
Well, yeah. And, it's interesting because even my peer group, I was saying, I'm going to go talk about, marriage and money and prenups. And everyone's like, ooh. So I think it's still a little
It's a dirty
polarizing.
word.
It is. But, people, women and men are waiting longer now to get married, right? And the millennials are waiting longer. People are starting their career and they're going into marriage. Having worked already, having acquired assets already. Some of them already have houses that they may have bought before. They have pension plans. They have RSPs. And so I think how do you have that conversation is that this is an important conversation that you need to go in as a couple to make sure that you are talking about what you want to achieve, what your goals are, and how you're going to manage your money. And part of that is going to be talking to an advisor that can help you understand, what implications there are. And when you get into the prenup side, definitely you have to, get and go talk to a lawyer. But I think it leads into that. I think a first step, we had talked about when children come home, go and have the children go, when your kids graduate from university, go and have them talk to an advisor. I really suggest that a couple go in prior to getting married or living together and meet with an advisor together. Meet with somebody who can ask you these questions about how are you going to manage your money? What do you want to achieve? What are your short-term goals?
Or even what they think is financially fair. If your husband thinks that if you get divorced, whatever he earned should be his,
right,
and you think that if you work as a team and you stay home with kids, whatever, and you walk the dog, that it should be an equal, at least you're on the same page.
Right. And this is the discussions. I totally agree with you because people think, it's unromantic. I don't want to talk about it. I know my partner, but things change. Things can change. We know how high the divorce rate is.
When you don't love one another anymore, things change.
Things definitely change.
And the three top reasons why a prenup agreement is put into place are to provide protection of separate property, alimony or spousal maintenance, and the division of property.
Right.
So, and as you mentioned, a lot of people don't even know what the assets are that their partner earns.
Right. And so, and sometimes a lot of people might say, well, I'm getting married. I really don't have a lot anyway. Like there's nothing to split up, but you might have a pension. You might have if you're a teacher or you're in the government or you're working somewhere that has a really good pension and you've been there a few years, that is going to have significant value should your marriage fall apart as well too. So you want to go and talk to a professional. You want to go and talk to a lawyer and say, what does this mean? Because a prenup can, in some cases, overrule some of the equalization laws that exist right now for a separation. Right now it's 50-50, right? And when you divorce, everything is split 50-50 and you have to walk out with equal things. If you've come into the marriage with a house or a big pension, a lawyer can work with you and say, okay, this is what you have to consider and here's what the risks are potentially if you don't. But I think you just want to be informed, and
Absolutely.
both of you want to be informed.
And you also, and I think one of the things actually my husband and I were talking about this last night is we decided to revisit our wills, which we did a while ago because we had left money to, sorry, kids, nieces and nephews. And now everything, we leave it to each other and then it goes to our children. But we want to make sure that is all locked down. And our assets have changed since we made a will, which must be 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think this is all part and parcel. So it's about sitting in front and having the discussion with each other. But I think having a third party in front of you is always good because they will probe you and ask you questions that you may not have asked each other, and it might shed some light. But it is about looking at, how are you going to manage your money in the short term and as you acquire things, talking about potentially prenups and talking about wills. Where's the money going to go? Especially also second and third marriages, right? You're both coming in with it. You both might have children. It's time to revisit and make sure should anything happen.
And I have heard some horrific fights with people, second marriages with children, and if one person has more assets than the other person, how that's going to be.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when people die, whatever you've left people, that interpretation is how much you love them. So if you get 5 cents more than me, they loved you more than me. So that's the way it is, and it causes irreparable damage to relationships between siblings and family members. It's horrific.
It is. It really is. And so I think again, these are things that we don't want to necessarily discuss, especially when you're planning your wedding. It's the last thing you want to sit down and talk about is prenup and separation.
It is awkward.
But again, I think going in and having a discussion. I encourage people to come into Meridian and see a wealth advisor who will sit down and put a plan together for your future and probe you and ask you those life questions that might also surface things that you need to think about in terms of assets and future as well, too.
We did that, and I was laughing because it was, we hadn't gotten married yet, and we were just trying to figure out, it was more of a will than a prenup. But we were asked about what our plans were for retirement. I'm like, okay, I have no clue.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, what's your dream so that you can start building towards those goals? And if something happens, if your spouse dies, is hit by a bus tomorrow, whatever, like how are you going to be able to follow through? So it was interesting. And then we did have different ideas. I mean, I expected that we would share the housework 50-50. My husband quite openly said, I don't do housework, but I will pay for the cleaning person.
Like,
so
that came out.
Okay. That's something that I could live with. That seems fair.
Yeah.
But I think I can work with that.
And we're really, really focused on bringing in people bringing couples. It's really important to bring people in, whether they've been married a long time, whether they're retirement planning. And on this retirement note, I would say to you, the trend is more and more not to necessarily talk about retirement because you might be really young and you're going, oh my God, I got to get a house first. But it's about what are your life goals?
Yeah,
what do you want to achieve?
Goals.
And then you're really going to uncover, are you in sync? Because one of you might be a spender and one of you might be a saver, and that's a whole different ball of wax.
Okay, how do people get in touch with an advisor at Meridian?
Go on our website, www.meridiancu.ca, and you can find a wealth advisor near you.
Thank you for coming in, Dilys.
Always great conversation.
Well, she said